Hello, beautiful homemakers. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about showing Christ's love on Halloween. Since my son was born, we've always gone to my parents' neighborhood where I grew up to trick-or-treat, and I was always struck by the joy of the evening. Neighbors reconnecting, children so sweet, happy, and excited. And many times it was the gruff old men with a bathrobe tucked around them opening the doors and handing out the candy, and I knew that they were just big softies at heart. They are the people I like to watch. They hand out the candy with a stern look, and then when the children say, "Thank you," their mouths begin to crack into a slow smile. I remember there was one man who would softly mouth, "Stay off my lawn," before shaking his head in resignation and smiling, just like Mr. Wilson in Dennis the Menace, that old black and white TV show. This night truly is the neighborhood coming together, especially if you take a few minutes to talk to your neighbors. I know many people do not celebrate Halloween, and for very good reasons. People dress as Satan, witches, ghosts, criminals, skeletons, and there's a lot of drinking going on. I get it. And there are some areas, like a street that has a haunted house party, where you see people dressed in scary or scantily clad costumes. But I found that we rarely do see older kids or adults dressed like this in the majority of neighborhoods we visited. I am very against going to haunted houses, as they go much too far, glorifying murder and satanic emblems. When I got married, we decided to get rid of any holiday decor that featured witches or sorcery or glorified death, etc. I had never really thought about it. I just wanted cute. But friends who didn't celebrate made some really great points about not bringing demonic images into our home. My husband had loved Halloween growing up, but even he said that he didn't want to go overboard like he did when he was a kid. We also understand the arguments about it not only being a pagan holiday, but that we do have people today who worship Satan knowingly or unknowingly. And October 31st is their high holy day, where they really do form a coven and try to cast spells, etc. If you don't believe me, just take a look at what is going on in Salem, Massachusetts for the weeks in October. It's terrible stuff, and it's not fun and games like some tourists may think. If you think attending an event there would be fun, then you do not have the Holy Spirit residing within you, because it's blasphemous to God. However, most of us live in so-called normal neighborhoods, and handing out candy can be a great time to show Christ's love. It's more like stepping back in time to the 1950s. Halloween is the second most celebrated holiday right after Christmas, so let's redeem it. I just looked up Jesus on a pumpkin, and a whole page of creative ideas came up. Try replacing Jack with a Christ-centered message instead. For what other time of year do you have people coming right to your door? There's one woman I know of who, after years of not participating, was convicted to share Christ on this night, and she has made some great ideas for Halloween signs. They all feature Jesus with cute cartoons, so as not to scare, of demons trembling at his name. Even zombies can have life in Jesus' name. Jesus is the light of the world, and light is stronger than darkness. She's got 22 signs. It's on the Kids in Ministry website. Choose Life, Not Death post has a picture of some of them. She talks about a child running to her house and saying, "Mom, a Christian lives here." This might be a great jumping off place for you to create your own loving signs, or even cards to go with the candy, or to buy and print these signs for your windows and yard. Over the years, because I couldn't afford to give out candy, I've given out pencils with Jesus hearts, Jesus stickers, and other items from Oriental Trading Company with scriptures and biblical truths. and the little children loved that too. One year during college when I lived at the beach, I had a huge bucket of seashells, and each child got to choose one, and they loved that just as much as candy. One little boy, about 4 years old, felt so sad for me that I didn't have any candy, and he reached into his own bag and gave me several pieces. How sweet and loving is that? So here are my ideas to bless people on Halloween. You need to plan ahead and prepare now so that it doesn't sneak up on you. Oriental Trading Company has Jesus stickers, tangy tart scripture candy, and they taste just like the name brand. And they have many other little things. I only buy from this company once or twice a year. I get items for each holiday, such as Snoopy stickers for the mail, Sunday school, crafts, etc. Plus, I like Snoopy plates and napkins. And Living Waters has awesome tracts. On their website, they have a post called, "Why Use Gospel Tracts? This is Why." And this short article says that the famous open-air preacher George Whitefield and the missionary Hudson Taylor were each saved after reading a tract. They get right to the point. Kids especially will appreciate the $1 million bill. They will keep it as it is made of good quality. They'll read it often and ponder the meaning for years to come. And I know, because that's what I did. They have a wonderful Halloween outreach pack with different $1 million bills. The bills are best for teens and adults. There's illusion cards and Albert Brainstein, which are wonderful for children. The Einstein bill and the Science Confirms the Bible tracts are also very good. They even have a 28-page Scientific Facts in the Bible tract. There's also a patriotic and a Santa $1 million bill. That's at livingwaters.com. Have your children help you prepare. You could put a small chocolate bar, a scripture candy, a Jesus sticker, and a tract all into a snack or sandwich baggie. It's a great way, in my view, to bless people coming right to your door in any way that the Lord lays upon your heart. I just see it as such a great opportunity. Now let's talk a minute about the supernatural. Children crave the supernatural, and we serve a supernatural God. It is Him who they really want. But because adults no longer take their children to church and believe worldly lies themselves, children turn to books like Harry Potter. I have many problems with these books because they break the rules. They let evil win, and they promote white or good magic to do bad things. Another huge problem is that the author went to modern-day witches for research and included their spells. This is truly playing with fire. These books get children interested in the occult and not their Heavenly Father. Doreen Virtue has a wonderful video by a former witch denouncing these books, and that video is called Why Christians Should Avoid Harry Potter. So, what can you as a parent do to satisfy this need for the supernatural? The most important thing is to read them the Bible and discuss the wonders of our God and the miracles Jesus and His apostles performed. And this is done by reading and discussing the Bible each day. In addition to the Bible, during October only, I always chose an old-fashioned storybook about magic or witches. I did this because most children dream about flying, having magical powers or superpowers, and I wanted to explore this with my child. I didn't want him to ever get curious and explore these things on his own. This way, I'm in control of the story and commentary. I can omit words or paragraphs, and I can point out how much fun it would be if we could fly, but at the end I say, "Now wasn't that a fanciful story? What do you think about blah blah blah? What do you crave being able to do?" And then I would lead him into discussions and answer his questions. You have to teach your child the difference between God's miracles told to us in the Holy Bible and fictional magic stories. Don't just assume that your child gets it. I completely understand if you disagree or are reluctant to read books with witches in them. The reason I chose to do this is because we know children who aren't allowed to do many things. Several aren't allowed to play any video games. Several can't watch any secular TV show. One is not allowed to read any magical stories, etc. Certain music is taboo. And what I noticed with these children was their anger or obsession about that which was denied them. They were constantly trying to sneak things forbidden to them at their home when they were at a friend's house. For instance, they wouldn't want to actually play with their friends. Instead, they'd try to watch TV or play video games instead, because they weren't allowed to make any choices for themselves. They weren't allowed to learn the reason why their parents weren't fond of video games, TV stories, music, etc. Think about Katy Perry with her strict religious upbringing. She said she had too many restrictions with no understanding, so she began sneaking things. She didn't have the Spirit of God living in her, and she ended up going full-blown the opposite way, and the despair is evident in her interviews. She does not understand the gospel at all. With her rejection of the light, she is living in darkness, and we need to pray for her understanding and salvation. And don't think that she is an extreme case. But in our house, we had Halloween decor. We went to church parties and costumes, Halloween library events with crafts. We played traditional games like Pin the Nose on the Pumpkin. We read stories about magic, and there was never an allure of forbidden temptations that went farther than simple, childish attractions. Instead of being obsessed with the demonic images of Halloween like many teens, we, and many of our friends who also went this route, have discovered that our teens have no interest in Halloween except for making young children happy by handing out candy. They see our neighbors going to Not Scary Farm, and they see them hanging demons on their doors, and they say that that is not pleasing to God and they want no part of it. In fact, I've heard these children of my friends when they were growing up as teenagers, I heard them say that they remember being scared of zombies and demons when they were little and would never want to put a small child through that. And I know this because as we would drive by our neighbor's decorated house, they would discuss it. I'm sure that when I was a teen, my parents hated my rock music. I was going to church, and yet I was listening to heavy metal and punk, and I loved it. But as I listened, it slowly dawned on me that the lyrics were the opposite of what the Bible taught. I didn't know what a Black Sabbath was, but I eventually figured it out. I began to notice the artwork on albums and t-shirts that looked demonic. I learned that the upside-down star was satanic. Crazy Train was a catchy song, but Ozzy just did what? I went to a concert and the group sang about 666 being the number of the beast, and they were celebrating it, not denouncing it. My parents let me figure it out on my own, probably because they couldn't understand the lyrics, all while taking me to church and living out their Christianity. And within a year, I left all that behind of my own accord without a fight. So instead of just saying no, I decided I would introduce the topics myself to my child so that I was in control. My child was never interested in Harry Potter. Had he been, we would have read the first book together, and I would have dissected it with him. But because I never wanted him interested in it to begin with, I introduced books that spoke of magical things while discounting them at the same time. I'm going to tell you the books we read that I feel I can recommend to you as quote-unquote safe books that won't lead your child down a harmful path like the Potter books will. Reading books aloud with your children, such as the ones I'm going to mention, allow your children a peek into Halloween, whether you celebrate it or not, without the fear of them delving into any harmful books or practices on their own. Children want magic to be true, just as you did when you were young. These fanciful flights of imagination are fun, without delving into any wicked practices. And unlike the Harry Potter books, they do not whet the appetite for more. They do not want children to delve into magical spells. Instead, these books reinforce that Halloween is just a time for games and to dress up in imaginative play. Our absolute favorite Halloween story is The Little Leftover Witch by Florence Laughlin, Loughlin. It's a delightful book about adoption. Is the little girl who appears on Halloween really a witch whose broom broke and is grounded until next Halloween? Or is she a runaway from an orphanage? Is she really working spells? Or is it just coincidental happenstance? Reading about this child's transformation from little witch to little girl due to loving and wise guardians will warm your heart. It features great parenting, so rare in most books, and it is a book so captivating that we couldn't put it down. I recommend it for ages 5 to 13, but even older children will enjoy hearing you read it to younger children. The book also lets the reader work the answers out for themselves. Halloween Treats by Carolyn Haywood. Anything by Carolyn Haywood is going to be good for children ages 5 to 10, and older children will sneak in to hear as you read to younger children. And I suggest reading all of her stories to your children. But the Halloween stories in this book are snippets from her main books, and so they feature all the children from her other series of books: Eddie, Betsy, Star, Lilybell, Officer, Kilpatrick, Jonathan, Penny, Billy, Boodles, and Anna Patricia. Only the first story is original to this book, but all of them are highly enjoyable. One thing to mention is that unlike the majority of Carolyn Haywood's other books, this book does not feature her original drawings. For whatever reason, I cannot imagine, as her illustrations are simple and beautiful, whereas the illustrations in this book are below par. But the book is Halloween Treats by Carolyn Haywood. Here Comes the Bus is another favorite from Carolyn Haywood. While not exactly a Halloween story, it's a wonderful story to read in the fall. It's about a boy who is starting school and the different little daily adventures he has, such as leaving his birthday cake on a fence post, making a pumpkin man for his front porch, and making friends. It romanticizes school, of course, but it's still a really good book with many delightful scenes, and we read it every October for years. Taffy and Melissa Molasses is the sequel. Albert's Halloween, The Case of the Stolen Pumpkins by Leslie Tryon, Tryon. This is an interactive picture book in that each picture gives you several clues, if you look closely enough, as to who stole the pumpkins and where the perpetrator left them. Chief Inspector Albert, Miss Maple, Shamrock Holmes, and Sam Slade are all on the case. They find notes and puzzle pieces as they go on their Halloween adventure. Can you solve the case with them? That's another book that will be reread annually, ages 5 to 10. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, a look and find book to encourage focus and exploration, match and compare, and connect words with pictures to build vocabulary. This is fun for littles. It's not much of a story, but it goes great with the TV episode. Gus and the Baby Ghost by Jane Thayer, with pictures by Seymour Fleshman. A very sweet, life-affirming picture book about how everyone loves babies, even ghost babies. Jane Thayer is an alias for Catherine Woolley, whose Jenny series of books I also highly recommend for young girls. There are 10 Jenny books, Ginnie, and they are all fantastic. I highly recommend them, except for Jenny and the Mystery Light, which instead of being written in the 50s and 60s was written in the 70s and went off the rails, discussing voodoo and drugs. The book I'm recommending is Gus and the Baby Ghost by Jane Thayer. The Haunted House, featuring Mickey, Donald, and Pluto. This is an old Disney book with great pictures and a not-so-scary ending after all. It gets over-the-top wonderful reviews. And I think it must be because, when you're little, the idea of a haunted house is so scary. But the Disney pictures are cute, and it has a good, logical ending that makes young children feel better. And so adults were rating it as the most wonderful Halloween book ever. The Halloween Party from the Black Lagoon. The Black Lagoon is a series of books where the chapters are only 1 to 5 pages long, perfect for a beginning reader. And they have cartoon pictures and jokes. And every adult in every book, is portrayed as a monster to Hubie, the kid who doesn't do well in school, until the end of each book. It wasn't my favorite, but my child loved them, as do all kids. Every holiday has a Black Lagoon adventure book, ages 7 to 11. The Halloween Party from the Black Lagoon. Another favorite was Space Case by Edward Marshall. Pictures by James Marshall. This is a classic picture book about a boy who encounters the thing from outer space on Halloween, who has come to Earth to observe our customs. He spends the night and then goes to school with Buddy McGee in the morning. It's a very imaginative book that will charm you. You might as well pick up the sequel to read in December, Merry Christmas, Space Case, which is when the thing says he will be back at the end of the book. This is for ages 3 to 8, Space Case. Cranberry Halloween by Wendy and Harry Devlin, Devlin. Now, when I was little, we only had the original story called A Cranberry Thanksgiving, and I loved it. When my son was little, I discovered at the library that the Devlins had made a series of books for all of the holidays and seasons, and each book is well written with great illustrations. We always made a point to find the silhouettes, a feature of every book. Now, this particular story, Cranberry Halloween, is a mini mystery. Who stole the money that was raised to build a new dock in Cranberryport? It features Grandmother, Maggie, Mr. Whiskers, and Mr. Grape, ages 5 to 10. Wilma Pitchford Hayes wrote many books in the 50s and 60s. Her books about the Pilgrims and the American Revolution used to be in all of the schools and libraries, and they were very well researched. Highland Halloween's prologue tells of the origin of Halloween from the Celts, and why pumpkins, black cats, trick-or-treating games, and bonfires are a part of it, and how the Scottish Highlanders brought their traditions to America. She proceeds to tell a story that could very well have been handed down over the centuries. While it is a classic, I don't think many kids would be very interested in this story today, unless they are of Scottish or Irish ancestry, as we are. This is for older children, ages 8 to 12 or older. It's about 60 pages with large type and has realistic pictures. She does a good job of giving the characters Highland accents and sprinkles in facts from the old country. But adults will probably like it better than children, and that's why I mention it. The Trouble with Miss Switch and Miss Switch to the Rescue were books by Barbara Wallace and were ABC after-school specials in 1980 and 1982 that can now be seen on YouTube. I would highly suggest reading the books first. Miss Switch is a school teacher, and of course, she's also a witch. It is highly imaginative and not at all scary. Unlike books and movies of today about witches, we really enjoyed the series, ages 8 through 12, and we enjoyed the video of the book as well. What the Witch Left by Ruth Chew, Chew. Two girls get into a locked dresser drawer and discover some very unusual clothing. Magic gloves, a bathrobe that makes you invisible, boots that can take you 7 leagues with a single step, etc., which all get them into little scrapes. I remember this book from my childhood and wishing those items were in my bottom drawer. My only caution is that I haven't read the author's other books about witches, and while this one is okay, What the Witch Left Behind, no, What the Witch Left, don't assume that all of her books are. If you can only choose one book to read in the list, however, I would choose the first book that I mentioned, Little Leftover Witch. Another classic is The Magic Shop by Maurice Dalbier, Dolbier. It's a classic storybook about good and evil, and the pictures are whimsical, full of clues as to just who the mysterious stranger who smells like smoke really is. The names used in the book are from Shakespeare. And just so you know, the magic is in a magic wand and is called white magic. So this is a really good time to reinforce that white or good magic does not exist. It's an extremely well-known book, and yet I had just discovered it. I think it's a wonderful tale about good and evil and will really make your children think. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the best Christmas pageant ever, but have you ever heard about the worst, crossed out, best Halloween ever? There's also the best school year ever. The Herdmans are back, and these books are just as good as the original. I thought that this Halloween book had a fantastic ending, and it's good for all ages. Be sure to get the Christmas movie, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, with Loretta Swit, too, from the 1980s. It is very well done, and it's worth your time, especially if your children enjoyed these books. Halloween, Are You For Real? By Harold Myra, M-Y-R-A. A picture book for Christian parents to read to their young children about God's victory over evil and evil spirits. It touches on the origin of Halloween and All Hallows Eve. It talks about Jesus, God, and heaven, and it closes with 2 Timothy 1:7. And of course, there are always C.S. Lewis's books, the Chronicles of Narnia series, though I know some people do have a problem with that series as well. I understand. Now, I want you to remember that the old books I mentioned above, which are imaginative, and old TV shows like Miss Switch or Bewitched, are very different from the books and shows of today. The new books and shows, including Sabrina, Twilight, and the Disney Channel's The Owl House, glorify witchcraft, the occult, magic, lying, and bad behavior. And in The Owl House, the main character is bisexual. While the old TV shows from Bewitched to Lucy had at least one episode featuring a seance, the scenes never glorified it, and in fact they were all ridiculous scenarios, which makes it a wonderful teaching opportunity. Now once, before I could say anything, my young son popped up, "You don't have to tell me again, Mom. I know the Bible forbids this." And don't forget this part. After you finish any Halloween story, go back to the Bible and say, Now, what does the Holy Bible say about witchcraft? Read them Deuteronomy 18 and about King Saul visiting the Witch of Endor in 1 Samuel 28 and how much that displeased God. Teach them to run from fortune-telling, tarot cards, Ouija boards, seances, chanting, yoga, meditation, crystals, the enneagram, and astrology. Now I'm going to read you a series of Bible verses connected with what I just said. Leviticus 19:31, 20 verse 6, 20 verse 27. Deuteronomy 18 verses 9 through 14, 1 Samuel 28, 1 Chronicles 10 verses 13 through 14, 2 Chronicles 33 verse 6, Isaiah 8 verses 19 through 22, Isaiah 47 verses 8 through 14, Micah chapter 5 verses 10 through 12, Acts 19 verses 17 through 20, Galatians 5 verses 19 through 21, and Revelation 21 verse 8. I encourage you to read them all and see what God Himself thinks about witchcraft, necromancy, spiritualism, which is consulting with the dead and spirits, and the occult. I also encourage you to watch a Doreen Virtue video called Get These New Age Objects Out of Your Home, because they do sneak in. And then for you, I'm also going to recommend 2 books. Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James is an excellent mystery novel that takes the beloved characters from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and puts them into a mystery. Now, I wasn't sure if the author could pull it off, but she does it well. The prologue is an 8-page synopsis of Pride and Prejudice, written almost as though it were a newsy letter from a nosy neighbor, which hits all the important parts of the original story, and it's very well done. So even those who aren't that familiar with Pride and Prejudice can enjoy this mystery, Death Comes to Pemberley. Lucy Maud Montgomery, the author of the beloved Anne of Avonlea series, wrote over 500 stories, and I'm suggesting for you Akin to Anne, Tales of Other Orphans, edited by Rhea Wilmshurst, because of the very first story in the book, Charlotte's Quest. Poor orphan Charlotte, having to live with noisy, irksome relatives, doesn't quite fit in. One day she decides to gather her courage and ask the local witch if she might find her a real mother. Wise, old, impoverished, yet jolly witch Penny takes one look at her and discerns her needs. Now, Penny isn't a real witch, but the children think she is because her home is so broken down and she looks like a witch to them. Witch Penny also appears in the Story Girl novels. Okay, so wise, old, impoverished, yet jolly witch Penny takes one look at her and discerns her needs. She contemplates how to bring about the idea that just popped into her head. She sternly tells Charlotte to be sure and follow her directions, including the turning about 3 times and knocking 3 times at a certain door, and maybe, just maybe, there might be a mother for her at the end of her journey. It is a lovely 18-page short autumny story for you, and the book contains 19 of Lucy Maud Montgomery's short stories. Oh, and I just found another book on my shelf. In fact, it's a series of 6 books written by Peggy Parrish, who wrote the Amelia Bedelia stories. But these books are for older children, I'd say 7 to 12. The series is called Eliza, Bill, and Jed Mystery. The very first book is called Key to the Treasure. The second is Clues in the Woods. The third is The Haunted House. The fourth is Pirate Island Adventure. The fifth is The Mystery of Hermit Dan. And the last one is The Ghosts of Cougar Island. Now these are 6 very wholesome mystery stories. And the 3 children are siblings. They do a little bit of arguing, but then work it out. They have good parental relationships, and the stories themselves are extremely interesting, very creative. Not like the trash they put out today. When I was about 8, my mom took me to a new library, and I found the book The Haunted House, which is not scary at all, and of course it's not really haunted. And I loved it so much that every time we drove by that library, I would say to myself, that's the library that has the book The Haunted House. What I especially loved about this book is that the author gives you 7 clues that you get to solve on your own before the children do in the book. And if you end up getting this series for your children, when you reach this book, prepare in advance. What I did when my child was 7 and was able to read is I took the clues from the book and I put them on 7 pieces of paper for him to solve without the book. So one morning, it was a summer morning, we woke up and I began reading him this book. And then when we got to page 38, I had him go lay down in bed because that is where the first note is going to be found. When the children wake up in the morning, they open their window and discover something taped to it. Well, I taped the first clue to his bedroom window. And it says, "Welcome to your new home. Follow the clues to a treasure." And this was the riddle. Is gate first to the garden clue at? Very easy to solve, but a little more difficult for a 7-year-old. And then a few pages later, on page 41, I put it at the backyard gate, similar to where the children would find the second clue. And these words are jumbled. You have to unscramble each word. A few pages later, we come to another clue that is a little bit more difficult to solve. And I put that under a rock in the flower bed out front, which is similar to where the children would be finding their third clue. Another few pages, and the clue is a mirror image clue. And then you jump all the way from page 46 to 74 before you get the next clue. And that not only is a mirror clue, but the words are all smushed together. Clue 6 was on page 101, and it's in Pig Latin. And clue 7 is on page 135, and it is the hardest to solve. And I suggest that you use graph paper to write out this clue for your child. So of course this series became one of our favorite books. And I found the first book, The Key to the Treasure, on my bookshelf when I was nursing my son. It had belonged to my husband's grandmother, and I instantly recognized the characters, Liza, Bill, and Jed, and thought, oh my goodness, this is the lady that wrote The Haunted House. Of course, then I had to buy the whole series, and I had to wait 7 years for my son to grow up to read it to him. I do hope you have as much fun reading to your child as I have had with mine. May God bless you as you teach your children and bless others. Happy autumn. Bye.